Hey everybody, I'm Your Name and welcome to the channel. Today we're going on a trip. Well, not really a trip, because we're talking about places you probably can't go. We're diving deep into the top 10 countries Americans can't visit in 2025. Listen, I love a good vacation. Sunshine, beaches, maybe a fruity drink with a little umbrella in it. But some destinations are off limits, and I'm not talking about that creepy uncle's basement. We're talking about countries with travel bans, advisories, or just plain old danger zones. So, buckle up, maybe grab a snack, and let's get into it. First up, we're heading east to the land of kimchi and karaoke. Well, not really. North Korea, officially the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, tops our list. This isolated nation is known for its strict authoritarian regime and, let's be honest, its mysterious leader. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory do not travel, citing the serious risk of arrest and long-term detention of US nationals. Tourism is strictly controlled, and independent travel is a big no-no. You can't just book a flight and show up with your selfie stick. The few Westerners who have visited were part of organized tours, heavily monitored every step of the way. Think Big Brother, but with more propaganda posters. So, unless you're a diplomat or a journalist with a death wish, it's best to admire North Korea's unique culture and interesting haircuts from afar. Next, we're flying over to the Middle East, to a country with a rich history and beautiful architecture, Iran. Now, Iran has a complicated relationship with the United States, to say the least. The two countries have been at odds for decades, and diplomatic relations are practically non-existent. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory, do not travel to Iran, citing the risk of wrongful detention and imprisonment. American citizens, especially those with dual citizenship, face a higher risk of being targeted. And trust me, you don't want to end up in an Iranian prison. The food is terrible. So, while Iran has a lot to offer in terms of culture and history, it's best to admire its beauty from a safe distance, maybe through a travel documentary or something. Our next destination is a country ravaged by war and conflict, Syria. For over a decade, Syria has been embroiled in a brutal civil war, leaving its people displaced and its infrastructure devastated. The situation is nothing short of a humanitarian catastrophe. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory, do not travel to Syria, citing the ongoing civil war, terrorism and kidnapping. The Syrian government has limited control over many parts of the country, and armed groups are rampant. It's basically a real-life war zone, and not the fun kind you play on your Xbox. So, unless you're a humanitarian worker or a war correspondent, Syria is a definite no-go zone. Let's hope for peace and stability to return to this once beautiful country. From one conflict zone to another, we're heading south to Yemen, a country facing a dire humanitarian crisis. Yemen has been ravaged by a civil war that erupted in 2014, leading to widespread famine, disease and displacement. The situation is absolutely heartbreaking. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory, do not travel to Yemen, due to terrorism, civil unrest, armed conflict and kidnapping. The country is plagued by violence, with airstrikes, bombings and armed clashes a regular occurrence. And not exactly the ideal vacation spot, right? So, unless you're a humanitarian worker or a journalist with a death wish, it's best to stay far, far away from Yemen. Our next stop is Libya, a North African nation struggling to find stability after years of turmoil. Since the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, Libya has been plagued by political instability, violence, and a power vacuum that has allowed militias and extremist groups to flourish. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory, do not travel to Libya, due to crime, terrorism, civil unrest, kidnapping and armed conflict. The security situation is highly volatile, and there's a serious risk of being caught in the crossfire. And trust me, you don't want to be caught in the crossfire of anything, especially not in Libya. So unless you have a burning desire to experience life on the edge, it's best to avoid Libya for the foreseeable future. Hold on tight, because we're heading to the Horn of Africa, to Somalia, a country synonymous with piracy and instability. Somalia has been grappling with civil war, terrorism, and a lack of effective central government for decades. The security situation remains extremely volatile, with the constant threat of attacks by the Al-Shabaab terrorist group. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory: do not travel to Somalia due to crime, terrorism, civil unrest, kidnapping and piracy. Kidnapping for ransom is a serious concern, and the Somali pirates are the stuff of legends or nightmares, depending on how you look at it. So, unless you're a seasoned security contractor or a journalist with a death wish, Somalia is a hard pass. Our next destination is Afghanistan, a country that has seen its fair share of conflict and turmoil. Following the withdrawal of United States troops and the Taliban's takeover in 2021, Afghanistan faces an uncertain future. The security situation remains unstable, and the human rights situation, particularly for women and girls, is deeply concerning. The United States State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory: do not travel to Afghanistan due to terrorism, civil unrest, kidnapping and armed conflict. The Taliban's control over the country has led to restrictions on freedom of movement, expression and assembly. It's not exactly the kind of place you want to be caught Instagramming, so unless you have a compelling reason and a high tolerance for risk, it's best to avoid Afghanistan for now. We're heading south to South America, to Venezuela, a country grappling with political and economic turmoil. Venezuela has been in the throes of a severe economic crisis marked by hyperinflation, shortages of basic goods and political instability. The situation has led to widespread poverty and social unrest. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory: do not travel to Venezuela due to crime, civil unrest, poor health infrastructure, and arbitrary arrest and detention of US citizens. The Venezuelan government has a history of targeting or arbitrarily detaining US citizens for political reasons. And trust me, you don't want to end up in a Venezuelan prison. The food is even worse than the Iranian prison food. So unless you have a really good reason to go, it's best to admire Venezuela's natural beauty and vibrant culture from afar. Our next stop is Iraq, a country still recovering from years of conflict and instability. While Iraq has made some progress in recent years, the security situation remains fragile, with the persistent threat of terrorism and violence. The country is still struggling to rebuild its infrastructure and institutions after years of war. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory: do not travel to Iraq due to terrorism, kidnapping, armed conflict, and civil unrest. Terrorist groups, including ISIS, continue to operate in Iraq and have targeted foreigners in the past. And let's be honest, nobody wants to be on a terrorist group's hit list. So unless you have a really good reason to go, like you're a diplomat or a journalist with a death wish, it's best to avoid Iraq for now. Our final destination is South Sudan, the world's newest nation, but one still grappling with the legacy of conflict. Since gaining independence from Sudan in 2011, South Sudan has been plagued by civil war, ethnic violence and a dire humanitarian crisis. The situation remains volatile, with millions displaced and facing food insecurity. The US State Department has issued a Level 4 travel advisory: do not travel to South Sudan due to crime, kidnapping and armed conflict. The country lacks basic infrastructure and healthcare is extremely limited. Plus there's a high risk of being caught in the crossfire of the ongoing violence. So unless you're a humanitarian worker or a war correspondent, it's best to admire South Sudan's resilience and natural beauty from a safe distance. Well, there you have it, folks. The top 10 countries Americans can't visit in 2025. It's a real bummer, right? These places are fascinating, but sometimes the risks are just too high. But hey, don't despair. There are still plenty of amazing and safe destinations to explore around the world. Just remember to check those travel advisories before you book your next adventure. And hey, while you're here, why not hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on more exciting travel content. And remember, if you're using music in your videos, stick to the YouTube Studio library. It's ad-friendly and keeps the lawyers happy. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe.